Oh, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first webinar of 2019 focused on SAP RAR FP07. And I think it's fitting that we start with RAR since we started our vision and journey as experts in the Office of the CFO with the partnership that we've developed with SAP on revenue accounting. So I think it's great that we've started, and I want to thank Sarah Jacek and Gerald Wellenhofer for joining us. So Sarah, next slide. Reminder, as always, some housekeeping items. We are recording the webinar, so feel free to download it, share it. We have a number of people who watch from conference rooms, so we'll make it available to you through the website. Ask your questions throughout, so you can see on the screen here, you can go down to the little question box, ask your questions. We will try to answer them throughout the webinar. Try to focus your questions on the can I questions as opposed to the how do I questions. Yes, we'll talk to some of them on how, but often those tend to be questions that are more specific to individual customer situations. And again, finally, you can download previous webinars. So we have the entire series. You can probably listen to the world of RevRec from FP01 to FP07 through Bramisol. So I encourage you to do that. Check us out over here. You can come to the home page through the Resource Center, scroll down to the bottom of the page, and download the different webinars. And I also encourage all of you to check out our webinar next week on January 31st. We'll be talking about an important area in lease accounting, covering issues and challenges around disclosure reporting and validations. So Bramisol's probably the only partner out there who offers a complete set of reports, both for RAR as well as RevRec, and leasing topics that include not only the reports themselves via FASB, IASB, et cetera, but provides validation to that. So with that in mind, next slide. Again, contact us. We're available, bramisol.com. Love to have you join our happy family, as it were, on Facebook, become a follower, and then through LinkedIn. So please feel free to join us in the conversations. Today, I've completed the welcome introductions. I do want to welcome Gerald Wellenhofer from the development team. Gerald will be covering a lot of the FP07 enhancements. And what we're very excited about this year and about FP07 is the idea, and I'm sure Gerald and Sarah and company will talk about it, but the idea of SD RevRec parity. We've been talking a lot about to and about customers who may or may not have embraced RAR because they didn't have full functionality, and now we are there. And kudos to Gerald and the team in Waldorf for getting us there. We'll talk about some customer examples with Jacek Dudkowski. Jacek will talk a bit about some customer examples specific to where FP07 might work better. And then we'll see a quick demo by Sarah Thompson, which is always great to see on proof of delivery and some other enhancements. So I will stop talking because I'll hand it over to the people who know what they're talking about. And I'm sure they're the ones that you've been waiting to speak with. So Sarah, I'm going to pass it over to you quickly, and then you can take it from there.
Yeah, thanks, John. So we do have Gerald from SAP with us here today, which is a huge plus. I would like to kind of have him talk a little bit about what some of the enhancements are within FP07, why SAP went this route on this certain release, and kind of what some of the great capabilities are with the ability to upgrade to FP07. So as we kind of go through that, I'm going to kind of start with an overview and pass that over to Gerald to kind of walk you through some of these enhancements. So Gerald?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So what you see on that list follows our strategy that we have seen that new release would be too expensive from a time perspective to implement. And so we ship basically new features with our feature packages, which are basically support packages. And so they'll follow our usual methodology. So we have also a release information node which is node number 2382402, which you surely find also in the search for nodes. And that one sort of also covers our features and also documentations around that feature. So if you are interested in particular details, you can refer to that release note. And we recommend, generally speaking, to always implement the latest feature pack. It should be easy to consume package, and it's not only containing new features, it also sort of contains improvements with respect to things which you usually don't see on the user interface, but it relates to performance, to also enhancements on an architectural way, and also error corrections. And of course, also those features which you see here on that list. So this is covering from overview additional SD support features, also added flexibility in contract management, and also additional operations support, as well as some improved support for disclosures and improved flexibility for other things for contract changes. Now, the first couple of features for the SD process support, they cover something where we have seen that those processes are used by customers, and they also need support by revenue accounting, as those processes are relevant for revenue accounting for those customers. And so we sort of also include that. If you maybe go back to the overview slide, because I would still mention some of those which are not described on the detail slides which are following, but I'd just like to maybe mention some of them. So those processes which we see in detail is the proof of delivery. The stock in transit is, from a technical point, quite similar. Basically, it involves two movements of goods, and the later one as well, as we see that for the proof of delivery, shall then trigger revenue recognition event. Call-off order is also a process which we see, and that comes with a specific flavor. And that was mentioned in the introduction by John, migration of relevance type D for the SD revenue recognition. This is something what we have seen that customers have those scenarios. They would like to migrate to revenue accounting, and therefore we now support also this migration. I would emphasize for that kind of area that we also have now a migration guide available for those customers who like to migrate from SD revenue recognition to revenue accounting. So we have a specific note which is 2733866, and that basically covers how to migrate from SD revenue recognition to revenue accounting, and how to set those POB properties and also the item categories in SD. For example, if you do the migration from type D, you would need to set then a specific flag for the item category that basically the invoice creates the performance obligation, which is also a new feature in revenue accounting. And that is very important for us, that this kind of migration guide sort of is available. And I think this is a great accelerator for everyone who is in that situation to upgrade from SD revenue recognition to revenue accounting, which you have to do as a reminder if before you migrate to S/4HANA, as SD revenue recognition is not available at that point of time, but we had already a session on that. So just as a reminder for that. The other areas, there are very or many small areas on that. I think the most important ones are described later in more detail. Yeah, I think having said that, I think now we could go to the next slide. Yeah, and Sarah, please, as you're going to demo that later, please jump in if you like to comment anything. Otherwise, I would continue with the description of the proof of delivery. This is a process where you sort of have a goods issue, but later on in a specific SD transaction, you sort of can confirm the delivered quantity. So what has been confirmed, and actually those confirmed quantities shall then trigger the revenue recognition event, as basically that is then the sign and the signal for revenue accounting that those performance obligations are fulfilled with those specific quantities. Here you see that this is a specific transaction in SD. It's called VLPOD. And by doing so, you can now integrate that kind of process in revenue accounting. And you might remember revenue accounting always sort of reverses any kind of FI posting from the sender component, like goods issue, which is triggering already the FI posting for goods of goods, cost of goods sold. And we reverse that as we have a matching principle with costs and revenue, and we recognize costs together once the revenue is recognized. And so if the goods issued is triggered in this example, again, we sort of reverse that posting, and in some FI then has not any costs recognized. And once the revenue is recognized, we recognize then the corresponding portion of the costs as well. Yeah, we'll see later more details in a great demo. Just also to comment that you can cancel a proof of delivery and re-enter then new quantities if something has changed. Next slide, please. Call-off orders. This is also a pretty common process in SD, and this comes with a scenario where you first create a contract with transaction VA41, and this is basically creating already the revenue accounting contract. Now, fulfillments are not directly created based on this contract, but you have contract release orders. So those are specific orders which sort of reference this contract. And in that implementation of that process, this release order already create a fulfillment event for revenue accounting. And if a goods issue related to such a contract release order is coming, then as we have seen in the previous function, then this again sort of does cost update. So the cost would be already recognized with the planned costs from the contract release order, and the goods issue would possibly update then the cost information. We have created a specific event type for that kind of process, which you need on the to set on the sales order item. And you see on the slide in the middle that this is event type RO. We sort of require here that the billing is done on the SD contract. And just as a little side remark, you might know that we also support that the invoice is or can have an update to the transaction price. And this is also true in that example. And so if there is any kind of update with respect to a rebate or anything from the invoice, it also would update the total transaction price from the contract. And so even if you have a price change, then once the invoice with respect to that particular order, which has been now then delivered, then would update then the total transaction price. And with that invoice, also the total transaction price will then meet the expected value. Good, I think we can go to the next slide. Change type explanation for POB changes. This is actually a very prominent and pretty underestimated topic in the whole IFRS 15 ISC 606 area, because changes are as important to think of as also the initial recognition of a contract. And so we have already managed a great environment to have for contract changes. And now with that enhancement, we sort of can monitor even in a better way how the changes occurred for a contract. So we introduced contract change types, which were basically already internally governing which kind of change is executed for a particular change. So maybe you remember you have two types of changes in ASC 606 or IFRS 15, which is either a contract change or a change of estimate. And you need also to differentiate that for unit distinct and non-unit distinct items, as this behaves differently. And now we sort of document this, what we sort of internally identify for such a change. And this is a list of about 30, more than 30 different items, which is also documented. And those reasons could be that a POB was deleted, or that a SSP and a contractual price was changed, or also that operational document was changed. And this was sort of very important for our customers to understand that. And so we document it now. And also in a body, you can influence what kind of change type you set. And you, in that enhancement, in an additional enhancement, you also can now set a customer specific change type, as you can enhance also those reason types with your own reason types. And so you can set those custom specific reason types or the SAP types for those which you think the change type should be set for. Yeah. And so this is the enhancement around that. And there are also, as you see on the user interface, additional features here set. Now, the next feature is a little enhancement with a better integration even between revenue accounting and FI. So with our posting run, we create an FI document, and with that feature, you can jump back from this created revenue accounting or FI document with the environment and to the relationship browser back to the RAR contract. And you see this very nicely displayed on the screen. Okay, I think those were one of the highlights, and I think I went already into how those are sort of used by the customers and why we have built that. And so, Sarah, I would now hand back to you.
Thank you, Gerald. That was very informative, especially for myself, and I'm sure a lot of our users on the phone. Right now, I would like to kind of take a moment, bring in one of our kind of experts in the area, Jacek, to kind of talk about what some of our customers have seen, what they've done with kind of the upgrades up until FP07, and how this is going to help a lot of our customers that we're currently working with today. Jacek?
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Gerald. And Gerald actually stole a lot of my thunder with explaining how these new features will help our customers. And I think I would like to maybe, rather than talk about our customers, just talk about with Gerald how our current customers with these new features, such as call-off orders, proof of delivery, which until now have been something we have been seeing and addressing through enhancements, but now coming to standard, how that would help and make it easier for customers to migrate onto the RAR platform. And especially, as you said, since the SD revenue recognition and the features available within that will no longer be available once the technology moves onto the S4 platform. One thing which I think a lot of folks on the phone would probably want to ask is, especially with call-off orders and the proof of delivery with new delivery types, new RAR items, categories basically being created in effect, is this data also available through the migration process? So the complex process of migrating onto the RAR platform for all the in-flight contracts, especially when I have a complex call-off order scenario, is that also covered in the functionality that has been released?
Yeah, we sort of course, care about also migration. Maybe a general remark. So even if we now support those scenarios, we are also capable to cover additional scenarios based on customer enhancements. You know that we are able also to include fulfillments or any other events coming from an external system. And so we have seen also customers with respect to call-offs which build their own methodology and without using now the new item types and the assignments in the customizing, they did it in their own, also including migration. So this is just an example that if a feature is not yet supported, that there are also ways to flexibly enhance that. For the call-off orders, I would say there are also now ways to do the migration. That should be mentioned also in the referencing notes for the release information note. For the proof of delivery, I think I would also like to refer there to the respective note, how the migration is supported there.
Thank you, Gerald. And I think one thing I would like to add is the other changes, as in the type of contract change and the document flow. In our experience, we have seen that perhaps some, I don't want to say forgotten, but perhaps some slightly overlooked area of these projects where clients focus on the eventual end postings and the revenue allocation and obviously the GL results, which are critical, of course. but the audit trail and the ability to understand end-to-end the life cycle of a contract and ability to report on that life cycle when requested both internally as well as externally sometimes becomes an afterthought of reporting. Just go pull data from tables. And these new features elevate a lot of those questions. They give you that detail where that's currently accustomed to by revenue teams, especially the document environment, the document flow, the audit chain between operational documents, RER contracts, and eventual FI posting. It is the reporting and the audit trail area of these implementations is just as critical as the scenario and the incoming data. So folks should definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah, I fully agree. And as also said, that often sort of one only focuses on the initial recognition of the revenue, but the contract changes are underestimated. And I think we provide here really a great support also for the contract changes and learning also from customers. They also would like to really document that in a better way. And therefore, we have introduced the change type reasons to do so.
Yeah. Sarah, I think that, given everything that's already been said, I think that will be enough for me. Back to you.
Awesome. Thanks to both of you. All right. So from here, I want to go in and kind of showcase a few of these different functionalities that's available now within FP07. So just to kind of go through some of the enhancements, it's still going through the full end-to-end life cycle. There's just within different areas within RAR, I want to focus on like proof of delivery and some of the other pieces that Gerald and Jacek were able to tell us. So to get into the demonstration, I first want to start with proof of delivery. So proof of delivery is now an enhancement that can be set up within the IMG. So you can configure it for your different customers. So for example, if I wanted to pull up a customer that I have today that is relevant for revenue accounting, so an RAR customer that I have out there that I'm currently using, I can pull up the customer sales data, and then there's now the ability to mark if it is relevant for proof of delivery. So you can make a customer relevant, and then you could also go through in the IMG and maintain proof of delivery relevance for the different item categories. So when you're creating these sales orders, different materials can also be created for proof of delivery. So I do have a sales order that I have already created out there, and I want to go ahead and kind of showcase what that means from the revenue accounting sales side. So what we've done is I've got a sales order for that same customer, the 10022, my RAR customer. I've got two different material here. Both material that I plan on selling 10 of. So it could be 10 widgets of each different types of hardware. So each of these material. However, with the different item categories, we're going to have some that are relevant for proof of delivery. So once you take that and you actually view that on the revenue accounting standpoint, you'll be able to understand kind of how you're able to recognize the revenue. So rather than as soon as the delivery goes out, you're able to recognize that revenue, we're actually taking that proof of delivery from the customer. So I can go in and showcase my contract order 2036 within my contract work list, and that's going to bring up the different revenue accounting contracts that we have out there. So we've got new search capabilities that I will showcase later, but right now I just want to search for my specific sales order that I have. So the operational document we'll be searching for 2036. It's going to be the same one across all of proof of delivery. I now have the two contracts here. I'm going to select into my gap contract. And we'll notice that we still have our two materials that have created two performance obligations because we still are only selling those two pieces here. We've got our contractual prices, if we have a standalone selling price, what they're allocated for. But when we go and look at our revenue schedule, this is going to actually tell us when we can start recognizing revenue. What we'll notice is our one piece of hardware out there is only recognizing the quantity of 5 while we still have an unscheduled quantity of 5 that are out there. So we're wondering kind of how we're able to see that information. So why is there only a 5? You can see that it was because of proof of delivery that is out there, and you can actually go back in to your proof of delivery and see why that delivery didn't take place. So the proof of delivery screen here, this is going to give us that same proof of delivery for our contract. And then we'll be able to see we delivered on the 10 of the first hardware, so that's why we were able to recognize those. However, on our proof of delivery that came back from the customer, the quantity that we were supposed to deliver was 10, but they only received 5. You can set up different reason codes as to why something happened. In our demo system right now, we have either over delivery or under delivery, reason unknown. You can have other reasons in there, you know, if something gets damaged in shipment, or there's other reasons that take place for the proof of delivery. But right now we can see that it was an under delivery. We don't have the exact reason, but there's still 5 out there that still need to be delivered. So that is why it kind of breaks out those different pieces to be able to say, I can recognize my 5 today, but I still have 5 within that same performance obligation that need to be recognized to be able to fully complete this contract. Any questions so far on this contract, or Gerald, or anybody want to kind of jump in and add a couple of comments? No? Okay. We're going to close out of these. The next one I want to talk about is the additional financial documents that are now in the relationship browser. So relationship browser has always been something that's kind of important to SAP, because at any point in time, you're always able to take your financials and any subsequent documents that flow, and you're able to see all of that connected without having to search for these different documents. So what SAP's done with the revenue accounting reporting is they wanted to add in some of those relationship browser capabilities. So if we have a contract out there that we want to view, I already have a revenue accounting contract that I want to see. I can pull up my contract here, search that I'm looking at an IFRS contract now, drill down, and I can see that I've got my 2 hardwares. I can always drill into my revenue schedule again, so I can see if I have any revenue that has been posted. We can see here in our summary some of the revenue that's been recognized as well as revenue that's been posted. So this has actually been posted into FI. So there should be a subsequent FI document in SAP. So from here, I can go in and I can take a look at pulling up documents within SAP, or I can take a look at pulling up different FI documents within RAR. So if I wanted to pull up an FI document in RAR, what's going to happen is I can look at that same contract. And I can see here I've got my contract for the 16636. I've got the invoice correction that took place as well as the receivable adjustments for that 200 value that we saw. It's also going to give us that GL document. Well, that GL document is tied to my original sales order. It's tied to the other postings that take place. So it's got all of it in one place that we can drill down from the relationship browser. So right now, I was looking at a report within Revenue Accounting and Reporting. I was able to drill in from there to take me to my GL document, and then that's going to pull up my full GL document within SAP Financials. So again, it's all within one place, so I can always come in, take a look at my environment, my document environment, and go to my relationship browser. And now this relationship browser is going to say, here's my original accounting document, and then here's all the subsequent documents that were posted from that RAR posting. So we can see we can get down into the profit center documents that were taking place to show everything that relates to our overall financial postings. The next piece I want to showcase revolves around some additional search capabilities. So we can see here, this is usually the pretty generic search that everyone has set up on their search engine. Well, now there's additional searching capabilities that are out there. So for example, I can come in and see customer contract or customer performance obligation. I can search by specific performance obligation. For people who are looking to go for S4, or bringing in those business partners already within ECC, we've got the ability to do the same with business partner as well as business partners by performance obligation. I can go in and search by WBS element that may be out there. You've got all these additional capabilities that SAP has brought into this new enhancement pack because our customers have been utilizing some of these. Our customers are using, project systems, WBS elements, and they want to be able to search contracts by certain WBS element or by specific performance obligations that are out there within customers. So it added these additional enhancements to be able to see these searching capabilities. All right, so the last one I want to showcase with you guys is around contract modification types. So if you go in, you make a change, you can go ahead and run a report within the table view to see what those changes are. I'm actually going to get rid of my contract and I'm going to search a specific sales document that we had out there. So I have another sales order out there that I wanted to view, and I can go ahead and take a look at my gap contract. So within this gap contract, we're looking at our hardware and our software for the contractual prices here, $51,000 and $2,400, and then we have our two standalone selling prices. Let's say, just for example, I don't know if anyone would actually go in and manually make changes here, but if you had someone come in and make a change saying, that standalone selling price isn't correct, I actually think that we're going to make it $4,000 for this specific contract to make save, we'll actually be able to see the reasoning types behind what some of the changes are to those performance obligations. So I can now see that my standalone selling price is $4,000 for this contract. Come back and refresh. We've got those new values here. Well, I can go ahead and run my table views for all of my changes that take place for this specific contract. And I'll show you guys kind of what that looks like. And I'll show you the new fields that have taken place for our specific contract. 100, 1. Okay. So we have our contracts here. We can see there was a 2,000 and then there was a 4,000 value. As we scroll over, we now have the reason types, reasons for the MADI, as well as the change type reason codes here. You've got all these different options for how something could be a reason. So as we're scrolling down, we'll be able to see there's a reason for this one. It was excluded from allocations. We'll see number 6 is going to be an SSP was changed. Maybe the contract was changed, duration, contract type. The POB was deleted. There's currency changes, contract modification is not enabled. You'll have all these different contract change reason types. So as you're doing your auditing, as you're going through these contracts, understanding how the changes are made, you're able to pull up reports and see specifically what was changed, how it was changed by these different reason types. All right. That kind of wraps us up for some additional enhancements. There are plenty of others that are out there. These are just some of the ones that we wanted to kind of showcase for you guys today. And with that, John, I will send it back over to you for any questions.
Yeah, we have a few out there. Thank you, Sarah, Gerald, Jacek, great job. One of the first questions that's out there has to do with migration. So the question that's out there, and maybe Gerald and Jacek, you can talk to this one together from different perspectives. Can you implement RAR at a point in time for transactions going forward and in parallel leave historical transactions on VF44 and kind of bleed them out? Gerald, if you could comment for a moment on, can we do that? Does that happen within the context of RAR? And then Jacek, if you would comment for a moment when Gerald's done about, I've seen customers do this in the past where they kind of execute something where they take in-flight, it has to do with in-flight contracts and some of your experience. Gerald, go right ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, John, and thank you for this great question. Once you activate, and this is done on the level of the SD item category, so once you activate such an item category to be relevant for revenue accounting, you transfer new items into revenue accounting. And so basically then I can answer the question with yes. So old contracts which are still going and were activated for SD revenue recognition for the same item category would be still treated according to that one, and only new contracts according to that setting would then be treated into revenue accounting.
Thank you.
And yeah, maybe a quick comment also to the bleeding out scenario. We sort of also think that might be a good idea to activate for new contracts revenue accounting. And if you have a significant portion of contracts which bleed out meanwhile, then of course a possible effort for a later migration is reduced. And so that might be a very good chance to even bleed out a great portion or even all of your contracts. And then, of course, the less contracts you have to migrate, the easier it is to you. So even that might be a reason to start very early to integrate new documents into revenue accounting, as maybe a significant portion of the old contracts is bleeded out.
Sure. Jacek, I know we've had several customers who've implemented this. Can you talk a little bit about, our experience when this happens? And I know that this is not simply a technical discussion, but certainly a accounting discussion. Any thoughts on that?
There are definitely a couple of factors that need to be considered. At the high level, obviously, Gerald says is correct. There could be some complexity introduced once you start thinking of subsequent events on contracts which are, excuse me, originally under SD revenue recognition, and you have subsequent events such as perhaps returns, changes, cancellations, credit memos, right? Then this new document is created in the system, and you need to understand whether it needs to be processed via still the old process or RAR. So it really becomes dependent on how company has introduced that process. In some cases, for example, when a change to contract happened, customers prefer to just totally cancel the original contract and recreate the new one, or perhaps do a credit memo, or very different. Again, folks have done different things. So you need to look at that and how that would behave in an environment where both SD RevRec is still managing some contracts as well as RAR concurrently managing new transactions. The second aspect of that is the posting model for SD RevRec and RAR is somewhat different. And that posting model would then need to be taken into account as a organization transitions to be able to look at both and still understand not only obviously going from an original SD RevRec to a posting model where both types of functionality are posting at the same time, perhaps for some in-flight contracts as well as some new contracts which are now under RAR, and eventually transition to the new posting model. So the answer is yes, it is a feasible scenario. It does require careful planning and execution, especially around management of these documents and events during that dual sort of execution time frame. And I call dual execution as the time frame where you still have executing VF44 transaction and any documents to those contracts, as well as you're executing RER transactions concurrently for the same fiscal period.
Got it. Thank you. Another question is around rewinding to proof of delivery. Is the proof of delivery, goodness, is proof of delivery functionality integrated with SAP event management? So this is not a manual process, given this is a typically very high, for many customers, typically a very high volume process. Gerald, can you comment on that?
Yes, so actually right now I'm only aware about the process which Sarah has just shown, and that would involve a manual confirmation of the delivered quantities. However, so I'm not sure to which extent this is included in an automated process, but you can build some automation around that, as you could set also the very same fulfillment event from outside. So if you need to do a confirmation from outside, and you might have an application here, then you can create those fulfillment events your own, and it would then behave the same way as if those fulfillment events would be sent out of this proof of delivery transaction, which was been shown by Sarah.
Okay. Follow-up question on the SD VF44, the bleed out. I assume that some of the tricky part, Jacek, that you mentioned, and certainly Gerald, comment is things around variable consideration, forecast true up, or specifically in this case, things like returns and credits of old items. I assume that's one of the areas that you would have to forecast. Is that something, Jacek, we've seen before?
Maybe I'm not following forecast, but a variable consideration can encompass a number of solutions. So yes, there's definitely that part. And again, it's very much process dependent on what particular process has been implemented or is planning to be implemented. It also has to do how you're estimating that with an RER. So the answer,
and in the case of in this specific example, I was one, but in this the specific follow-up question is really around things like returns and credits of old items. So for example, somebody buys a laptop and it has a warranty, it might have a service period, upgrades, et cetera, but you're managing one maybe in VF44, it's bleeding out. There might be other parts of transactions in new RevRec, RAR. So it's just making sure that you're coordinating all of the returns and credits across both platforms, both areas.
It does become somewhat complex, and again, very much customer specific, right? I can obviously configure a return order type, and that would also be either relevant to RER or relevant to SD RevRec, and it would be in this case created after RER has been implemented. So most likely it would have been configured as a new document that's relevant to RER. So now we would need to make it associated with a previous SD type document. So the answer is it becomes, I don't want to say complicated, but it requires management of these items. You obviously, within RER, you have functionality that allows you to select what is pulled into the tool RER versus what is not, even if something is configured to be RER relevant. And that could be the case where you use that functionality, especially in the RAR monitor, to selectively choose which documents get processed through one process versus another.
Okay. And if I may
yes,
comment this, So we usually follow the document flow. If we decide is it relevant for revenue accounting or is it not relevant for revenue accounting, and so if a document was created originally with the old VF41 transaction, then this also does not become relevant for revenue accounting. On the other hand, if the order is relevant for revenue accounting, then document which is included in the document flow, then this also becomes relevant for revenue accounting. So long word short, then I would say that if a process was implemented that somehow this is outside this kind of document chain, then specific care needs to be taken into account that this is going into the right consideration.
Thank you. All right, I think we have time for one more question. We're getting close to the top of the hour. Someone asked the question, does a transition from SD RevRec to RAR require setting up new unique item categories, especially if using RAR and SD RevRec in tandem, as was just discussed, to finish out the existing contracts relative to for SD RevRec? Gerald, any thoughts on that?
Right. As explained, once you have a setting for an existing item category, so you don't need to create a new one. If an existing item category is becoming relevant for revenue accounting, then new contracts will be forwarded and managed in revenue accounting, and old ones would still run under the old SD revenue recognition. So by doing so, there is no need to create new item categories. There might be reasons to do that for new orders that you might have some organizational reasons to do so, but from a general point of view, there is no reasons to create new item categories.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so we're just about done and out of time. Any more last-minute questions out there from folks? All right, with that, I will wrap up. Again, I want to thank Gerald, Jacek, and Sarah for a terrific job on this webinar. I think everybody got a really good sense of what's going on with the new FP07. I'm excited because this represents a real breakthrough, in my opinion, and I know I was talking with Gerald earlier late last year about FP07 and the fact that we've reached SD RevRec parity, which was a big milestone, particularly with things like call-off orders and proof of delivery. The other thing I think you'll see a lot of in here, folks, is an attention to detail around things like audit, where we have the search that was done as well as the related documents that will make auditing that much easier as a process. So I want to thank again Gerald, Jacek, and Sarah for a terrific job. Look forward, everybody, to our next webinar on the 31st, where we'll talk about leasing, particularly around the disclosures aspects of that, and see some of our disclosure reports for FASB as well as IASB and the validation that goes with that. Next month, we'll continue in an RAR series as well as some more webinars around revenue recognition, leasing, central finance, etc. So thank you very much. I hope everybody has a terrific day, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. Bye-bye.